Alright, so I cut it down, and I just want to show you what is left of it. So, pretty much, I cut the whole tree down with a pole saw, and then I used loppers to cut the rest of it up. But I'll show you, I'll cut a piece for you. My chainsaw is quitting on me, so I had to stop cutting the bigger logs. But that's really it. That's all that the tree is. The tree is nothing but branches. The whole tree was nothing but branches. But pretty much all this was cut with loppers. So the good thing about the tree, when taking it down, is that the tree is very soft, kind of a wood. It's very easy to cut. It's not like cutting maple or oak. Forget about it. Oak is a nightmare to cut up. You need a very good chainsaw, and you need really good loppers to cut oak. You know, you can't. I mean, I'm pretty much chopping all this stuff up with loppers, but we'll show you how easy it is to lop it up. You can see a little bit of a mess here, but what I'm doing is I'm letting the leaves dry out and just let them dry up, and then all this wood that's all cut into smaller logs and all that, I'll eventually let it season and then use it in the grill and just cook with it. But it's very soft wood. I mean, let's see if we can do this one-handed. Cut one of the bigger branches right here. Alright, so basically it's as easy as this. That's it. And I can cut all the way up to around, all this was cut with, you know, I mean, these are pretty big size branches to cut. So I was pretty much able to cut all of that with these loppers. Very, very easy. Very little of it's going to have to get cut with a saw. Like these are bigger logs, and the other ones had to get cut with the chainsaw. But pretty much these logs right here, I can cut on my table saw. You know, my my rotary saw. Could cut those up on that. That's not a big deal. But a couple things learned about this tree, even though it's not that big of a deal. A lot of people are like, oh, you planted too close. I knew I was going to cut it down eventually. I just didn't know how big it was going to get, and at some point, it needed to come down. So, some lessons learned about this tree. Definitely do not plant that thing anywhere near your house. Do not plant that thing anywhere. You want to plant it like all the way in the back of your property. That's different, where there's no structures or, you know, septic tanks or anything like that. That tree will absolutely cause you problems. There's no question on that. And the other thing about the tree is that tree was roughly about, what, 4 years old, I think? Maybe 4.5 years old from the time I got it from a seedling that was in a little pot. I think I bought it as a seedling, or I started it from seed. I don't remember. And it was basically from that point to what you see now. I had to take this tree down in about 4.5 years. So that's how fast that tree grew. So keep that in mind. That tree can grow very, very quickly. And my advice to you is, if you do plan on growing it, don't grow it near the house. Now, some of the things about this tree that has an interesting feature to it is you can see that the center of it's got holes in it, but it doesn't go all the way through. So wherever there's a node on this tree, like right here, there's a node, it blocks up. So bamboo is pretty much the same way. Everywhere there's a node on the bamboo, it'll be a stop. But with bamboo, you can blow those little stops inside the center of the bamboo out, and you can actually use that for piping. This ain't quite like that. You have to cut it between all those nodes, and those nodes are all over the place. So if you're lucky, you could probably get a piece that has hollow all the way through it. Now I'm looking for a smaller piece here. The smaller branches are really, really hollow. And you can use them for like smoking, or use it like a straw, you know, smoking like a smoking pipe or something. Let me see if I can find one here. I know I had some here that were really, really hollow. Some of it seems like when a tree gets larger, that hole disappears on the really large parts of the tree. But there's a hole all the way through that plant. Like here's a stem. And you can see how thin it is on the inside. I mean, the whole inside of it's just hollow. So it's really strange kind of a plant. But even the larger logs have holes in them, you know. I mean, you can see down here. You see how that has a hole in it? So the wood is good. I mean, you probably could use it for building purposes and stuff like that. And a lot of the logs tend to be straight like that. Those are nice poles. So if you're going to build something that needs a lot of straight poles, these trees would be perfect for that. But as far as like trying to get lumber from it, like 2x4 and 2x8, and trying to mill that down, I don't know if this would be good for that type of thing. It's better for poles and stuff like that. It's really good for that kind of wood. It's generally pretty light, but it's pretty strong too. I mean, the skinnier branches are really weak, but the thicker the branch gets, the stronger it is, but it's not as heavy. So if that was oak, this little piece would have some weight to it. This is light. This is very light. I mean, you know, there's not much to it at all. But if it was oak, forget it. You know, you'd know the difference. It's like double, triple the weight of this thing. So I figured I'd just give you a quick look at that, and I'll give you a roundup at the end, show you what the total mass of that tree is. I'll pile it up over here and then show you how much is actually there. You know, less the leaves. I'll let the leaves dry out in the sun and then flake that up. But I'll pile all of this wood into a pile over here and just give you an idea on how much mass that tree produced, and you know, give you an idea if you are growing it for lumber purposes. And the reason why I say you grow it for lumber purposes is because you can plant like 100 of these trees, and in about 4 to 5 years you can harvest those trees, and you get a lot of lumber from it. And to cut them down is relatively pretty easy. Like I said, I pretty much took that whole tree down with these loppers and my pole saw, and a chainsaw to cut the very final trunk part of it because it was really thick. You could take that tree down and cut it into usable material almost by hand. So there's really nothing to it. Cutting these branches is like nothing. So if you're growing it for lumber purposes, I would say you got to be very selective on what you're going to use the lumber for. You know, if you're going to try to get 2x4 out of it, you're going to have to let those trees go for maybe 6, 7, or 8 years until that base of that trunk gets really thick, and then you could probably mill it down and get some decent lumber out of it. But for 4 or 5 year use, you can get basically pretty good sized poles like this, and you can use those for your work, you know, your building structure. And it's pretty good wood if you look at it here. This is, you know, this is pretty good. This is almost like a maple, but it's really light. That's like the center of it right here. It's very light. It's nowhere near the weight of maple. But it's kind of a hard wood though, you know. It's got a nice surface to it. I really like this wood. It's light and looks very strong. It's like a very strong type of wood. But the fact that it's so light throws you off because it's kind of like a pine. This is actually even lighter than pine, or very close to it anyway. So, all right, so I'll give you a roundup. Let me finish cutting this up, and we will see what we got out of it.